guys, welcome to another BigLipz podcast. As always, my name is Catherine Reese. Joined with me is my good friend Sam Macaulay Blair. For those who haven't watched, we are kind of two independent filmmakers, former film students who. This is season 2 of the BigLipz podcast. So season 1 we kind of spoke mainly about film, just different film specific things, different genres, subgenres, stuff like that. So that this season we've been discussing purely TV. And so for episode 20, which is what we're on just now, which is insane, we decided to go for something so TV specific that I actually can't believe neither of us have done it before until now. Excuse me. So yeah, the topic for this episode is, of course, reality TV. And the reason that I chose this one is because reality TV is something that's so, hints in the name, it's so TV specific. Like, you're not going to get reality movies. I don't even know what that would be like. So basically, to like clarify, kind of, we're talking about reality TV in the kind of sense of we're not discussing documentaries or I personally, I'm not sure about Sam, but I wasn't going to discuss kind of documentary type programs like programs generally normally Channel 4 specific, like a 24 Hours in Police Custody, where it's like genuinely unscripted. So yeah, basically, to continue rambling, we're going to be talking about reality TV, so that's like competition shows or kind of like unscripted shows where they follow certain groups of people, certain specific individuals or events, things like that. Excuse me. So Sam, I think I already know the answer to this question, but we'll just jump in straight away. Do you watch reality TV? Is it something you enjoy?
No.
Yeah, I suspected.
Yeah, no surprises there. Yeah, it's interesting that you have drawn like a box around definition of reality TV, just because that was one thing that I was curious about, was what I figured you had the parameters that you did with reality TV, but yeah, I was curious because, arguably, it's sport. Like, I was going to ask, does sport count? Because sport is reality TV. And
True,
I mean, really, like the umbrella of reality TV is pretty big. I mean, technically, I work on reality TV, and not
yep.
technically. I mean, in actual fact, I also do work with someone who was on reality TV recently as well, which is also very weird. But yeah, no, it's not really for me. I think there's so much TV out there as is that I struggle to keep up with, and then there's other mediums, as we've discussed, like movies. I definitely don't read enough. Video games, and yeah, it just, for me, reality TV is the very, very bottom of the pile. So it's not that, it's not like if I walk into a room and reality TV's on, I'm not going to leave the room. It's not like it's not like a church.
Like, this is far too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a church and I'm a vampire or anything. It's just not something I'd go out my way to watch. There's the odd thing that maybe like, yeah, I'll get into that in a bit, but there's the odd thing that I'd maybe like stick on, but it would kind of just be like on a whim, or probably if I was with someone else and it was just like an easy thing to stick on. But yeah, on the whole, I'm not one to be like, oh, I can't wait to get home and watch the latest episode of Big Brother or I'm a Celebrity or Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
That's fair. I think these shows as well, sorry, just to kind of build on your point quickly, these shows as well, especially some of the formats, things like I'm a Celeb and Love Island and things like that, because they're on every single night, you need to watch them every single night so that you can be up to date with them, which is a weird concept when you think about like TV, because we've kind of spoken about that when you watch. I don't really watch shows kind of weekly anymore because of the way that we watch things and the different shows that I watch, and that I never generally keep up to date with things because, like you said, there's so much out there that I just always revert to watching normally something I've already watched. But yeah, by and large, I it's not something. It's definitely not something that I would admit to watching. But it is. I do have to admit I have watched my fair share of like trashy reality TV. I definitely don't watch it half as much as I used to. But it's similar because, like you're saying, there's like a million other things I would rather watch than reality TV. Do you know what I mean? And like I said, it's part of it. I think for me anyway is that like time commitment. Like things like I'm a Celeb, for example, is like 3 weeks long, and you need to watch that every single night.
Yeah.
And I just don't. You can't like do anything else. You can't have any sort of plans at night time or you'll miss it.
Yeah.
And then especially because of the kind of office environment that I work in, it's very much like, oh, did you watch I'm a Celeb last night? Like, it's so if you want to be watching these things, you need to be watching them as and when they're on, and I just don't have the energy for that, really.
Yeah, when they say keeping up with the Kardashians, they really do mean keeping up with the Kardashians.
Exactly. But yeah, there are reasons that obviously we'll kind of discuss later on that why I don't watch them as much. But yeah, part of it is things we'll discuss for later on, but the other part is that it's just generally trash sometimes. Infinitely, I would just rather watch something else, even if it's something I've already watched, or like something like put on while you're eating your dinner. Do you know what I mean? Like watch The Simpsons instead, or whatever. So obviously you've kind of answered that. I don't imagine there will be any shows that you watch. So are there any that you kind of like the look of, or that you would watch if you had unlimited amounts of time?
Just
no judgment.
Just to rewind it back a little bit. I think it's interesting you talked about obviously like the need to, like we were talking obviously about the need to keep up with it, you know, to actually like habitually watch it and commit to it. Like it is a commitment, and it's not just. It's interesting because, you know, we're kind of talking about it as being trash and quite cheap and sort of disposable, which all kind of is. But the interesting thing is that like it kind of has something that scripted TV in a lot of ways is actually now trying to recapture, because we have discussed this before, but like obviously you know, there is that need to watch it live, to watch it on the night, and scripted TV, you know, since we now have access to streaming services and the internet and all these things, there has, you know, there is an immediate, TV's kind of lost its immediacy, and it is constantly kind of fighting to get it back. And it's interesting that, yeah, it's the one thing that it does kind of like feel like it's constantly looking to reality TV, going like, how do we do this? How do we get this? How do we get people? How do we get it so that people have to watch our show when it's on? You know, the night that it's on. How do we make sure that they can't go into work the next day without having seen, you know, the latest episodes? So yeah, just that. I just kind of wanted to expand on that thing that you mentioned briefly, just because I think it is interesting that for all its flaws, it does still have something that that scripted content can't really match.
It's such a good point as well, because like there's, by and large, most people have seen at least a few reality TV shows. Everyone is aware of them as well. Like you even if you don't watch them, I'm sure could rhyme off easy the 4 or 5 just off the top of your head. Do you know what I mean? And it's funny that there's so much out there, and they just keep churning more and more things out.
Yeah.
And yet, like there's Keeping Up with the Kardashians, for example, is like seasons and seasons in. I don't know how many, but I'm sure it's in like the double digits now. Of just do you know what I mean? Just they're like one family, and then there's different things that go on, like Jerry Springer, for example. It's been going on for generations and things. So it's funny. It's quite funny that that's something that could keep going for so long without changing the format in any way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like scripted TV shows need to, like we've kind of spoken about before, they need to kind of keep you wanting to watch, and they kind of need to keep you guessing. But reality TV shows will turn out the same thing again and again and again, year after year, and people will still watch it year after year.
Well, it's kind of like, I guess, the difference between like gourmet dining and fast food, isn't it? There's always, you know, it doesn't really matter how much we know fast food's really bad for you. You know, you're still going to go to McDonald's.
Very true.
You know, and even if I guess if you were to actually draw a comparison, it'd be like if you stayed in a hotel and it was all inclusive, and you had access to like the best kitchen on the planet, but you also did just have like a fast food chain in there as well, and you could go have whatever you wanted, no cost, whenever you wanted. And generally, probably 9 times out of 10, you'd go for like the well cooked meal, but there probably would be points when you'd still go and have the fast food. There still would be a demand for it. It wouldn't just like the need for the fast food wouldn't just evaporate because price was no longer an issue.
Yeah. I think that's a good point as well, because there's part of reality TV where it's just like easy watching. So sometimes, and you'll know as well, sometimes you're watching, like if you're watching multiple TV shows and one of them might be really dramatic and one of them might be like a horror, and it's sometimes you just want something really light that you can just like switch off for. And I feel like reality TV, in fairness to it, is good for that. Pros and cons we'll discuss later on about that in general, but yeah, so obviously you said you don't really watch, like I was saying, is there any that you think that you maybe would watch if you had unlimited time, or any that you think, oh, that's a pretty cool premise?
Well, like, I guess to say to some of my favourites, like, 'cause I have watched, it's not like I haven't watched any.
Never consumed any reality
TV.
TV.
Exactly, and they're again
that would be.
Yeah, I've just somehow managed to avoid it my entire life. No, like yeah, there are ones that I have watched at different points in my life, and there are ones that I still would, if someone was like, oh, I fancy watch again. If I was with someone, they were like, "Oh, I fancy watching something, not scripted," which would be a really weird thing to just
that would be
say.
a very odd thing to say.
But the ones I'd probably go for, or have gone for in the past, is I really like, Would I Lie to You? The game show. I think that's just, again, like, it's just a really sort of like fun premise for a show, and yeah, it just has led to the nature of it has led to some great moments. QI is one that I've always really enjoyed. Again, it's a nice sort of dynamic, a nice sort of setup, and I like the fact that it tries to be informative. The Big Fat Quiz are always quite good as well, just because it's quite nice to have that sort of like reflection on the year. And again, they have had some great moments. Other ones I've watched have been like Nevermind the Buzzcocks, mostly for no fielding, to be honest, or like the guest stars. One that actually I had written down, which it took me ages to even think of, and I'm guessing you haven't thought of it because you mentioned reality TV as being a TV thing only, and how there couldn't be a movie of it. And so one of the ones I've got down, and I actually haven't ever seen the TV show of it, but I am a huge fan of the movies, is Jackass.
Of course. Just as you were saying that there, I was like, oh geez, yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah, and yeah, again, I think there's a lot of things that might seem hypocritical that I'll probably say later on, but Jackass is kind of immune to, I think. But I think it's because there's just like, it's actually just really like quite like, I don't want to say wholesome because it's not a wholesome.
I know exactly what you mean. There's wholesome vibes.
Yeah. There's just like there's like a friendship at the heart of it that is really like earnest and really genuine, and it's all very much like it's very sort of self-deprecating, in a very American way, I guess. It's very self-destructive, and it's not nasty, which it so easily could have been. But yeah,
I think a lot of reality TV is or leans towards like they kind of feed into that. I love that there's a very specific kind of theme to the reality TV. Like you like a panel show, panel quiz show.
The other one
fair, they're very funny.
The other one that I had written down, which I guess is maybe more in line with Jackass, was one that I watched, like maybe probably the most recent one that I watched for like a very brief spell, and that was one that I think Netflix put out called Ultimate Beastmaster, which is kind of just like Total Wipeout, but
I think I've seen that.
But they actually have on it like proper Olympic level athletes, all from like different countries. So that I found was like really like quite enjoyable, and I had like a lot more respect for it because I was like, okay, it's not just watching, you're not just there to laugh at people trying to do like an obstacle course. You're actually watching people who are like insanely fit and really good at this kind of thing, who are trying to do this like ridiculously like difficult challenge. And I was like, that was way more interesting because you're watching it and you're like, there's no way on this like earth that I could ever come close to doing these things. But so there was like such like a respect that you had while watching it, which you don't often get. So yeah, those are my picks basically. What are yours?
I think I've definitely, for mine, there's also a definite theme running through, and it's definitely this kind of idea of like a competition show. And I think it's similar to what similar to what you were saying though. I like when like it's such like a mum attribute almost, where I like to see people like, it's more fun for me to watch people who are like you're saying about the assault course thing, people who are actually already good at something and who have a talent for, do you know what I mean? It just feels like a much better watch than potentially the kind of show like Love Island, do you know what I mean, where you need very few discernible skills or talents for that, do you know what I mean? Like so but at the same time I feel like especially like the shows I'm going to mention they've got that kind of just epitomizes reality TV, where they've got all this drama, like constant drama, where my life has never been that dramatic. Like, do you know what I mean? Even when I was at school, there was drama happening, but it was never quite as manufactured or dramatic as it is in these TV shows, where it's always grown adults. So a very good one for the drama was America's Next Top Model, which is not the most wholesome by any means. There are a lot of issues with that, and especially when you look back at the things that happened and the things that some of the girls were forced to do and things like that. Like, but I would say that's mostly on the part of Tyra Banks. Just being, I feel like she would be one of those people that would maybe do anything for the drama, including like the mental anguish that doesn't really factor in her decision making. Another one I liked was like Hell's Kitchen. I love a good baking or cooking competition. Hell's Kitchen's obviously, it's very dramatic as well. It's so high stakes, and I feel like I like these kind of shows because it's, I don't know if you get this with the show that you were talking about, where I'm watching these and I can cook a meal, but I'm by no means a chef, but I'm watching it and I'm like, oh geez, those scallops are raw, I can see that from here. Like I don't know, there's something fun about watching this show, having absolutely no skills in these areas and being like, I could easily do that. Like, and not putting it to the test. I feel like for me anyway, it's sad as that is, that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, another weird one I like is Gogglebox. I don't know if you watch it. We've never really spoken about it. I don't know if that's your cup of tea.
I've seen clips of it. I don't think I've ever watched an episode all the way through. Gogglebox is an interesting one because it's basically just like, you know, you have things like Twitch and YouTube, where obviously people, and it's, you know, that's all like sort of video games where people will sit and play games, and you know, you're effectively watching them play a video game. And Gogglebox is basically just that, but with TV.
It is, yeah. You're just watching people watching TV. It's insane, and for some reason it works. And I couldn't even tell you why it's so entertaining, but Gogglebox is a really funny one as well, because I started watching Haunting of Hill House because I saw it in Gogglebox.
Oh, really?
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like it's a weird like an in between for shows that you don't know whether you should watch. Like, yeah, there's been loads of shows on that I've been like, you know what, actually that looks quite good, and then you start watching that way. So that's a weird a weird point. I don't even know what my point is, but
I think I do get where you're. I think I do see the appeal, because especially when, for me, it'd be more about watching something. I guess what, like that type of thing. Like with, again, if you also apply it to like streamers and stuff in general, I think if you've watched something, and it's the same with like if you watch a movie with people, you know, and you've seen the film, but you're rewatching it with them because you're kind of watching it not to rewatch the film. I mean, you are rewatching the film, but you also kind of want their reaction. You kind of want to be in the room when they see it. They have these moments for the first time, and there's just something really, I guess, it's a nice sort of collective thing, isn't it? When if you watch something, for instance, that scared you, and then watching someone else be scared by the same thing, it's nice to then you're then very much like sharing in that experience, and you kind of get to witness what you went through. And yeah, I think it's a nice form of connection that we kind of like have built, where yeah, we now get to. It's just the same thing, isn't it? We now get to watch these stories being told and see how like people react.
It's such like a simple premise as well, like, and it must be so cost effective. Do you know what I mean? They just set up cameras in people's house. They film for like it's like 12 hours throughout the week. They didn't get 12 hours worth of footage or whatever. But like that's how many hours? Well, you're slightly different because just you're so busy, and I always prioritize TV over everything else. But like 12 hours of TV in a week is so easy. But
True.
yeah, so kind of on the back of that, are there any that you don't watch that you maybe like the sound of that you or yeah, are there any that, or on the other hand, and this is a surprise question, so I apologize, are there any that you would have heard of or seen and been like, God, that is not for me?
I
Plenty,
mean,
I'm sure.
yeah, I mean, I think well, to go off of the ones that maybe I'd find interesting, I think like I actually do kind of think God knows, I mean, I don't know if they would even really fully count, but like under your definition, but you do get like the sort of crime related ones that are about like, you know, there's ones aren't there about like border, you know, people sneaking things through like airports or trying to sneak things through airports and America's Dumbest Criminals and stuff like that. That I think like there is just something I think I don't know. I think when it's to do with people committing crimes but badly, they're always ones that like if they're on, or like I remember being younger and then being on and just always like enjoying the snippets of them that I saw, and I guess there is a bit of like when it comes to them, you'll. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, trying to like analyze my own like biases here and like the way that which like my own like more moral spectrum. But I guess when it like comes to committing crimes, you do kind of get a bit of like, oh well, whatever happens to them's on them now because like they're like they've morally compromised themselves. So kind of like Home Alone, I guess, where like so much of the pleasure of that is just watching like the burglars like just get murdered basically. But because they're burglars, like, you're just like
bodily harm.
yeah, exactly. You're just kind of like, well, you know, I can enjoy this. Like, I'm morally permitted to enjoy their pain. So I think
that's a good point.
Yeah, and I kind of like, you know, it's really entertaining when you watch, again, like a show where maybe a scripted show where it's like people committing crimes really methodically and effectively and being really clever. But it's also really entertaining when you get the complete opposite end of the spectrum and you're just watching someone like spectacularly mess something up. And yeah, it can be amusing to see like the sort of like human error in play. I think another one actually that I've never really watched, but again I always like appreciate when it's mentioned is Mythbusters, because again it's just like it's a nice idea for a show where you're just literally it's in the title. But I appreciate like
I used to watch it quite a lot actually. Sometimes they would do like movie specials as well.
I think it was was it on Sky or something? I don't think it was on like terrestrial TV. And I think I only had terrestrial TV, so I think at the point in my life when probably would have watched a lot of it, I just didn't really have the means. Because I think it's one of those where I'd always hear like, oh, they tackled this on Mythbusters, and I was always like, cool. I enjoy hearing about that secondhand.
Yep.
So yeah, that's probably the other one. And then one that I have actually watched like episodes of, and it's just not really for me, but I appreciate the sort of like cultural splash that it's had, is RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, I like feel like that has probably had such an impact on like prejudices and like people's sort of like tolerances over the last like 10 years. And yeah, it's something that I always appreciate when it's brought up and when you see people sort of raving about it. Again, like I've sat and watched like a bunch of episodes of Friends and stuff. It's just never really been like, I can see the entertainment value in it, but it's just not really for me. But I do like, yeah, that's one of the few where I'm just like, I am actually really glad that we have that. It feels like a sort of force for good rather than the opposite, which it so often feels like reality TV is.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That kind of feeds into this idea of like people with talent, people who already have talent, and just kind of like honing it as well. And I am in no means up to date with RuPaul, but I have watched a few seasons, and they are talented. Those people, like, yeah, that's. I love that you've gone very like a lot more like highbrow than I did. Like when I think reality TV, I don't know whether that's just because of the reality TV show that I have. The reality TV show that I've watched in the past has been very, very trashy. That's always kind of what I lean towards. Like,
yeah,
like I've never quite hit out at like TLC level, but
I love that.
Like,
I said America's Dumbest Criminals, and you went, "Oh, well, you see, you've gone for the highbrow shows here."
Highbrow. No, but like compared to the shows that I'm thinking about.
I know.
I feel like Channel 4 specifically is like a law unto itself with its like reality TV. One of them that I always find hilarious, and hilarious is a bad word to use because I think the concept of it is hilarious, and the fact that it's allowed on the telly is hilarious, and that's Naked Attraction. Because it is just exactly what it says on the tin. It's just a box filled with naked people, and they just need to. And it's such a weird show because they're like properly critiquing people's bodies, like is what a lot of people are self-conscious about. And Channel 4's been like, yes, let's get these naked people on the show, on the telly for everyone to see. So yeah, I always think that's a very. Maybe not one that I would put on all the time, and certainly maybe not one that you would watch for your family, but I think it's not necessarily I would want to watch it, but I just think it's an interesting show to like exist, do you know what I mean? And it simultaneously feels very, very British and very, very un-British. Do you know what I mean?
I do know
like
what you mean,
yeah. The fact that we're like, yeah, come on the telly, get your kit off, you're good, everyone at your work will see this. And that seems very British, but on the other hand, you're like, there's this kind of stereotype that everyone in Britain's like prudish and whatnot, but it's a weird show, and it's weird that it's on like council telly, like Channel 4. Anyone can, if you've got Freeview, anyone can get Channel 4.
I love that.
Sorry,
I was just gonna say, I love that I called it terrestrial TV and you just called it council telly.
Okay. Yeah, man.
Just never heard it called that, but I love it.
You've never heard it called council telly?
No.
What are you talking about?
I don't watch reality TV.
That's just life, Sam. That's just life.
Except for they're watching highbrow shows.
Yeah, so one show again that I wanted to talk about, and this seems like there's a weird theme appearing here. I didn't realise until now, but again, I feel like the title is just hilarious. I haven't seen it, and a little part of me is curious. Obviously, not curious enough that I've not watched it yet, but that TV show that's called Naked and Afraid. Like, what is the premise of that show? Why are they afraid? Why are they naked? And what scenario are they in that they are both naked and afraid? Like,
yeah, you got me there. Like I do want to know more now. Yeah, like I am also curious what they're afraid of. And what would be great would be if every week it was a different thing. Like they just don't tell you. Like
yes, that'd be like a new person who's like, just like, you know how you get like those spoof reality shows where that was like that person that wanted to be a lamp. Like this is like, but it's a new person every week who just lives their life naked and they're afraid of something.
they're out there.
We'll get Channel 4's email. That sounds like something they would pick up.
Yeah, we know exactly who to pitch to.
Exactly, we've got our audience.
Yeah.
Another one. This is one that So this is why I'm saying that your choices are highbrow compared to mine. One that I have low key always wanted to watch, and for some reason there's only the Australian version that I want to watch, and that's Married at First Sight. And the reason I'm so conflicted is because I think that the premise is like pretty rank. Like I think it's I don't understand why you would need to. I get that it's a dating thing for people who are obviously struggling to find love, but I'm like, I don't understand why you couldn't just meet someone and build a relationship that way. I don't understand why you would have to get married, like,
Yeah.
and then inevitably get divorced. Because, do you know what I mean? Like, there's that thing as well. It's that it feeds into that kind of horrible, like, you're wanting to see how people are going to react. You're wanting people to start like fighting and things like that. But this is still their life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if they've chosen to go on this show for
You're not really
reason.
tuning in for them to find happiness, are you?
Yeah, no one's wanting that. Everyone's just wanting. This is this thing. I feel like you should maybe so like used to the drama and you're like attuned to it that's what you expect when you watch it. Like for example, I watched some of this year's I'm a Celeb, and the reason I didn't watch more, and this is echoed by several people I spoke to about it, is because everyone in the camp was too friendly and everyone was getting on really well. And that's like boring. I suppose that would be boring if you were watching a scripted show as well.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I was gonna say. Is the one thing you're always it's always hammered in scripted TV is like conflict, and it kind of is just. There's points that I would make on that note, but there's a very good movie that came out this year that actually kind of touches on this, and I'm not going to say what it is because I know that you've not seen it.
okay.
And yeah, at some point, I'm sure it will come up in discussion, and I'll refer back to this podcast then.
Love it. Episode 20. Make note.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I can't say there's any that I'm sitting like waiting for them to come out or for me to find them or whatever. Like generally, if I watch them now, it's just something that I've stumbled across. Like TV shows on Netflix or whatever, like Nailed It, or there's this one program called Sugar Rush. They're all very much like of a muchness. Where
What's
you
Sugar
can
Rush?
just oh my god, Sugar Rush is actually good. I'm not gonna lie. It's a baking competition. There's like 4 teams and there's 3 different rounds and people get eliminated. It's quite like a nice reality TV show. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no, after me just saying that all I want is drama, there's no drama in Sugar Rush.
But there's still losers.
But it's that
though,
thing
so.
that's similar to like, there's still losers, and it's similar to Bake Off where there's a tiny horrible little part of you that's like praying for the cake to fall or for like some kind of mousse to collapse or something. Do you know what I mean? Like just that horrible part of you as a person. But kind of obviously this will
no one's tuning in because they want to see people cooking very well.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to see nice. If I wanted to see nice cakes, I could just go into Pinterest. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, kind of leading into our next kind of switch in discussion. Do you think your opinion on reality TV has changed over time? Like, did you used to? I mean, you said you didn't really, or you haven't really watched. Like you choose to watch a huge amount. Sorry, I'm rambling. But has your opinion changed over time? Do you? Yeah, has it changed?
Yeah, it has, and like I said, I kind of watched more of these shows when I was younger. I was in school. I definitely remember watching things like Mock the Week, and again, a lot of the ones that I mentioned. When I was a kid, I remember watching bits of Big Brother, and again, it's slightly into like teenagehood. Never really that much. Never, I didn't. Even then, didn't really ever. I don't think there was ever one where I watched like every episode. But yeah, there were a couple where I was like, I I was invested in who was winning and who was getting voted out. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, I think when I was younger, it was like I just kind of saw it as like that's what adults watched, and that's kind of what it was, and so I did
Yeah.
kind of like enjoy when I was very young. Did kind of enjoy the glimpses of it that I got, and then yeah, there was a point when again I remember just like it would be discussed in school, so people would discuss these shows, and I would just kind of watch them partly to participate in the discussions. Um, and then yeah, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just I think eventually kind of just realized I was like, there's no doesn't matter if I watch this, and it is just kind of the same thing over and over again, and that can be nice, but at the same time, yeah, there's just so many. I think, yeah, I have such a love for movies and films and TV shows and the way that they're made and
Mm-hmm.
all that goes into them, that it just. I think it's more that I started getting more out of the other stuff that I was watching, and less out of the reality TV stuff at the same time, and it was just
Yeah.
the more it's kind of gone on, the more older I've got, the more I've kind of seen it as like I've seen all the sort of negative aspects of, or I just have developed a more maybe grumpy and negative outlook on reality
Mm-hmm.
TV and what it kind of promotes and encourages. And yeah, like you say, like it's just a lot of effort for kind of a lot of nothing. Like it's so empty.
Yeah.
You watch these shows and yeah, there's great moments and stuff. I'm sure there's there's moments that you can't that scripted TV never will be able to replicate because it is just like fluke things that happen that the magic of it is that it was caught on camera. But at the same time, as much as
Mm-hmm.
those moments have an impact and they're great to discuss and stuff, they kind of don't really burn that bright. I reckon if you like actively,
Yeah.
if you quizzed people on the street about like all the reality TV shows that they watch or have ever watched, and then asked them like the greatest moments. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure they'd be able to list a few, but like realistically, that versus like the impact that
Mm-hmm.
like a scripted show can have, I think just yeah, I think it does kind of pale. I think it's like yeah, it's like a much brighter flame maybe immediately where everyone's talking about it the next day at work, but then in the long term, you know, it's not something that really like stays in that really lingers in the mind. So yeah, I very very long winded answer there.
Yeah.
But yeah, my opinion my opinion has changed. What about yourself?
That's just. I would definitely agree. Like, I don't know how much of it is kind of like you were saying, where I obviously we both really enjoy like analysis of film and TV. Um, for me especially, one of my like the like joy of film and TV is that you can analyze it and that you can get as much out of it as you want, kind of thing. Like you can you can do kind of like deeper dives into the plot, into the story, and you can look into other people's theories of what's happening and like different fan theories and things like that, or you can just look at like coding and different things like that. There's so much with film and TV, like scripted film and TV, that like you're saying you don't get with reality TV. I feel like there's so little substance the majority of the time to reality TV. Like you're saying, even though I do like the kind of competition shows, I would never spare a second thought after watching the final to who won. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't impact my life in any way. I can't remember thinking of exactly what you were saying. Basically, like there's TV shows, episodes that you think about and that I would rewatch, but by and large, I wouldn't sit and find myself thinking about like an episode of Hell's Kitchen. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's an element of that, of just kind of like growing up. Do you know what I mean? Like you realize that you develop different interests and things. I think there's also an element, like you're saying, where when I was younger, I used to really like all the really trashy shows, like um, I didn't watch it at the time, but in the kind of vein of shows like Can't Pay, We'll Take It Away, and Repo Men and things like that, where I enjoyed watching them then, and then as you get older, it's you realise that it's really like exploitative and whatnot, and it's not half as fun when you realise that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
especially like Repo Men shows, as an adult, you have bills to pay, and you know that sometimes it's stressful paying them. So there's nothing like funny about it anymore, because you're like, God, they've obviously, like, you start to feel sorry for the people that the reality TV show is almost like mocking. Do you know what I mean? And it's just not as nice. It's like watching someone getting bullied. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like especially as you get older, you grow out of. I mean, not that you're a bully, but do you know what I mean? Like, you grow out of like making fun of people or like laughing at things that just because everyone else is. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, my opinion definitely. As I say, I veer more towards like kind of competition shows now. And yeah, I feel like the really trashy ones, like, I don't want to say morally, but morally just not really behind for reasons we'll discuss in a minute. But yeah, that's yeah, I think that plays a big part in it. Like you were saying, like just general taste, developing a taste for like film TV, good film TV. Yeah, that would definitely be my long-winded way of saying yes.
It's a great answer.
So kind of obviously we've sorry.
It's just that it's a really good answer.
Thank you. Kind of obviously we've been skirting around it, but there's obviously huge kind of criticisms with reality TV, and that's not just like because it can be because of the production value and things like that. Like there's genuine issues with reality TV. So yeah, what are your kind of thoughts on that? I assume since you don't watch much reality TV that there. Would you say that you didn't watch reality TV because you don't kind of like agree with it in that way, or?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a part of that. I think, yeah, there's just something a bit sour for me about reality TV. I just don't like you use the word exploitative, and I think that very much is it. I just think it's I think it, and said the word before, nasty as well. Like I think, yeah, I just don't really like the kind of culture that fosters and what it brings out in people a lot of the time. Like it does very much encourage you to kind of point at, laugh, and a lot of time at people's misfortune and misery, and there is an element of like sort of classism and inherent in a lot of them, and things like you're watching people who are kind of desperately either trying to make a bit of money or get a bit of fame, and sometimes it is kind of like that is motivated mostly by like someone's vanity, or sometimes it is just people who are like arrogant, and I think that's what we like to tell ourselves. That's what you'd like to kind of think about it, is like, oh, this person has gone on X Factor because they think they're God's gift to singing, and it, really it's like it's not. It's more that they want to be a good singer, and maybe they're being misled and being told that they're a good singer, and they're finding out live on TV that they're actually not. And yeah, I think like you say, just the more of it you kind of see and the more you're kind of exposed to, the more cruel it kind of feels. And
especially, sorry, just to jump in quickly, in terms of like X Factor and Pop Idol and Britain's Got Talent specifically, you read all these things that people who are bad, who are like awful, shall we say, get prioritized over people who are all right, because that's funnier to see someone who's just dreadful, like, and that feeds definitely feeds into that nasty thing. Like you're not doing that like in any to give them a chance. Do you know what I mean? Like you're doing that so that, and then X Factor, for example, as well, like changed to the kind of live studio auditions as well. So there was even more people to laugh at them. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. You're putting them on a stool so that you can kick it out from under them. Basically, like it is pretty nasty, and it's because it gets people talking and it gets views, and I just don't think it brings it a good side in people, and I think we already do kind of have issues with sort of societally with like looking at people's misfortune, or The way in which there is just like a lot of superiority complexes in the world, and I just think it feeds it in the kind of the worst way. I don't know why, but like a thing that always comes to mind is just that I think it's in Matilda when they're watching some like game show and it just like has those horrible like shots of the family just like laughing.
Oh, yeah.
And that to me is just like always plays in my head when I think of like reality TV. It's just people kind of that cruel, and a lot of time it's like people who aren't in good situations themselves, and that is kind of part of it, is like it makes them feel a bit better about their lives. But it's just I don't think that's a good way to live, or a healthy way to kind of like to survive, is to just look at, again, it's punching down. And I don't think we need to be doing that. I don't think we should be doing that. So yeah, no, I do think reality TV is quite ugly, and again, as I keep saying, exploitative, quite cheap as well. That's the thing as well, is it's looking for like easy ways to get these kind of big moments. Again, like X Factor is an easy one where you're like, well, you know, most people think they can sing, so what if we really put that to the test and like really upped the embarrassment thing, and have someone like Simon Cowell obviously present it, who will just be like utterly ruthless, and no. So I think those are probably like my major issues with it. What about yourself?
I think the thing that really kind of does it for me is that kind of idea of it being so exploitative, and like you had said earlier, that there's like weird class issues as well, it just feels weird to me that you would laugh at people who are skint. Do you know what I mean? Like in such a way, I'm like, everyone's skint, but then that feeds into what you were saying as well, where that's why it's funny, like, oh, they're more skint than I am, so do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like that kind of thing where it makes you feel better about yourself, which is kind of like how a bully would work. Do you know what I mean? Like, they tear people down. Yeah, I feel like as well, there's times when you're watching it and it's painful to watch because these people, or some of the people, don't realise that they're being almost made fun of. Do you know what I mean? And that just makes it worse. That's just when it turns into like being really nasty and cruel, like you were saying. And I feel like it's so weird that people that we love that, like I was saying, like there's so much reality TV out there, so that, and it's not just a British specific thing. There's obviously America's got loads as well, different countries and things. It's like a worldwide thing where people like lap it up, and it just seems like such a weird thing to like endorse, and it's very heavily endorsed. Do you know what I mean? I feel like as well in that kind of vein, it definitely, this kind of like scripted, unscripted reality TV show, things like The Hills, which and the Kardashians, which is reality, but there's scripted moments and things like that. They obviously take people, like those people will be going through something, like genuinely going through like a breakup, for example, and then it's been heightened and exaggerated for like entertainment purposes. Do you know what I mean? Or it just seems, again, that feeds into, it's just nasty. Like, if you knew someone that was going through a breakup, you wouldn't, the first time you saw them, be like, in a room full of people, be like, oh, how's your breakup going, by the way? Do you know what I mean? Like, you just wouldn't do that, and it seems weird that that's the norm for, like I was saying, like because it's unscripted for the most part. They need to kind of, the drama needs to be manufactured in some way, so that's and some types of shows like Love Island and The Hills and stuff like that. You kind of touched on it as well, where it's like they manufacture the drama. Then that kind of feeds into this whole kind of question of how much can you call it reality TV show if things are being changed and altered and adapted? Do you know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. So in that example, like stuff like The Hills, where there's different points where like people have nail polish on in one. If it's a shot reverse shot, I would have nail polish on in this shot. It would cut to you, and then it would cut back to me, and I'd have no nail polish on. So it's like they're not even trying to hide the
Yeah.
fact that it's cut and edited in a way. But it feels weird that we know this and it's been proven with things like that, but we still continue to we still absorb it in that way, and that's fact. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that's another issue as well, that the way that reality TV presented is that it's gospel, and yeah, it's a bizarre one because you're only getting the whatever facts they want you to have. Do you know what I mean? Like with anything, you kind of should be. Sometimes you need to do your own research.
I guess it feeds into that thing that you were saying right at the start, that like, but the big appeal really of reality TV shows, it's like turn your brain off entertainment. So that's, people don't want to think about the fact that it's not real. People don't want to catch the inconsistencies. They do want to just kind of put it on, and it's just a bit of noise, and it's easy, it's cheap entertainment. I think that's what it is. I think it's, everyone's very capable of like tearing these things apart, but people aren't really going in to do that, and they aren't going in wanting to do that. Whereas I guess like people would do that with maybe movies and stuff like that, because it's almost like more of a challenge, I guess, as well. Whereas you watch a movie and you're looking for mistakes because it's been so carefully constructed and you're aware of that there's maybe a bit more satisfaction in being like, oh, I noticed a mistake there. Whereas in like reality TV shows, it's like when you notice a mistake, you're like, well, yeah, of course. It's not pretending to be polished, and you're not really the audience. The audience isn't. We're not asking that of you, the audience.
Yeah, that's a good point. Apart from the fact that it's exploitative and nasty, like we were talking about, it's just at times just not very well made. Do you know what I mean? And that, as someone who's studied film and like has done short films and things like that, and especially like when we submitted short films, it had to be spot on. Do you know what I mean? We couldn't have any kind of flaws in it. But then reality TV there is on so many platforms and so many different shows and concepts and things, and like viewed by all these different people. But there's like, do you know what I mean? It feels like there's not the same kind of like production value or pride, even really, you could argue, in the work. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost that thing now. Reality TV is cheap, so exactly like you were saying, like we expect it to be cheap, so we don't care that it's cheap.
I agree.
And I feel like that's just as someone who loves film and TV, I feel like that's just bad form. Do you know what I mean? Like everything you create should be as good as you can make it. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, in that kind of vein, I wanted to talk kind of briefly about reality TV stars and what your thoughts on them were. Whether you think I don't imagine that you think reality TV stars should be all that. Do you know what I mean? Like, but what are your thoughts on the whole, especially in the kind of the time that we're living in? There's such a big thing, reality TV stars, and they're all over the place, and they get all these different like contracts and things like that with things like shopping websites and whatnot.
We live in an era where influencers are a thing, aren't we? So like stardom and celebrities have kind of changed what they are. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, if you have reality TV shows, you will have like people who become famous off of it. Whether by design or by accident, you will get people who just like, the public love a persona, and it's always just kind of gonna happen. And I guess the optimistic, like outlook on it would be, it gives people who would never otherwise get the platform, who would maybe have no success of finding like a career, gives them the chance to kind of break through and have their moment. Someone like Susan Boyle, who if it wasn't for a show like was Britain's Got Talent she was on, it's probably never going to make it through. It would never have like made it in this day and age. Would never have made the sort of career that she had. But again, that feeds into this sort of exploitative nature, because it's people like that they dangle in front of you to try and get the worst kind of to try and get all the to get more people to come onto it that they can then sort of take the mickey out of. And I think the thing that you find is that again, it's as we sort of mentioned before, it's all very empty, it's all very like cheap, and it's all very like fast. You might have these people who are like hot for a second, but they become irrelevant very, very quickly. And usually what happens with them is like either they just fade away very quickly into obscurity, or there's like some sort of scandals or some tragedies. It's just you don't. I couldn't think of any. I mean, not that I'm like well versed in any of this stuff, but I couldn't think of any like positive example of someone who's like become from reality TV and just it's just everything's gone really well, and it's just been like a total shining example of like, yeah, that was actually a really happy story that went well, and then maybe they did something really good off of the back of it, or they built something really good off of the back of it, or they used it in a positive way. It's just not really how any of it ever seems to go. So yeah, even like for the winners, it doesn't really feel like that much of a victory. It feels quite hollow. And on top of that, one thing I'd meant to mention in the previous point was reality TV can also be quite manipulative, as you mentioned, with it being scripted. And I guess elephant in the room. You obviously have like the recent I'm a Celebrity, which had Matt Hancock on it, and he was there. Him being on that was a political move. It was to try and like redeem him, and it's things like that. It's to try and humanize him and make him seem likable, and it just very, very, very obviously shows the sort of danger and just the insane sort of like, even that, where it's like you're trying to humanize someone who has been responsible for terrible things, and it just overall I disagree with reality TV itself is the problem. The stardom thing's always attached, but I think both of them are very bad.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think pretty much exactly the same, especially when you're talking about the fact that we live in this time of like where influencers are a thing. And I had kind of touched on it, where the shows that I like, especially now, are the ones where these people like already have talent. I don't know, I just have a little bit of an issue with people. Like there's such a thing like Love Island's such a thing where like people are famous now and you're like, oh, who's that? And they're like, oh, they were on Love Island, that's how they're famous. And this is a thing where you're talking about where they come out and they don't really do much except somehow land all these deals, like get, do you know what I mean, like they don't do anything, but they still have all this luck, do you know what I mean? They get all these contracts and they get all this money and blah blah blah, but they're so like they've not, I don't even know what my point is, I'm just rambling.
It does just to actually like draw from a real life example. So you mentioned Love Island in particular. There was a Scottish guy on it called Anton a few years ago. I never watched Love Island. Don't follow any of the stuff, but I know this because it was just when I'd moved back to Glasgow, so just when we were doing first year SAE, and I remember people sort of talking about Anton from Love Island a lot, and he came into the bar I worked, and I actually ended up coming in a couple of times. But the first time he came in, they gave him like a bunch of free booze, and obviously put him all over the social media, and it did work. It gets people were turning up to try and meet him, and people were sharing the post. I think it was like the most shared post or something that they did put out or something at that point. And he came back like another 3 or 4 times in like subsequent nights, like quite close together. And I remember one thing that like sticks with me, and I do appreciate this, was I remember him talking to one of the girls that worked there, one of the sales girls, and he basically just said, he was like, I know that this isn't going to last. I know that this is a temporary thing. I don't think I'm all that, but I'm going to, while this is a thing, I'm absolutely going to make the most of it and enjoy it and milk it. And I was like, I mean, I had a lot of respect to him for just like completely understanding the picture. And I can't fault him for doing that, because he had all these opportunities and he was doing it pretty much in, from what I saw, a pretty harmless way. When he was just turning up to get a bunch of like, he wasn't really turning up. Yeah, exactly. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, if you knew that you could go to a bar and get handed bottles of booze, then wouldn't you do it? So.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a much like a better way to go about it, like even a funnier way to go about it. Then I feel like there's some now, like reality TV stars now that seem to have this illusion in their head that they've worked really hard for what they've got. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, no, like you won the genetic lottery, you're good looking, and you had a fair amount of luck. Like that doesn't equate to you working as hard as someone who's worked their way up a business. Do you know what I mean? To get the same deal that you've just got. There's that one girl in particular.
Was it Molly May?
I can't even remember her whole name.
Yeah.
Molly
as soon
May,
as you said that, I was like...
and she'd made some comment about, oh, we've all got the same 24 hours in the day. Like, hen. I don't think that's the case. But some of us actually have to go to work and have a real job.
Yeah.
I feel like things
we've all got the same 24 hours, but some of us have a lot more responsibilities and commitments and demands as well, financially, and we don't all have the same opportunities to spend the 24 hours in the same way.
Exactly. We don't all have a staff of people either taking on 99% of what we need to do during the day.
Propping us up.
I feel like, so I feel like that's possibly one of my issues, is that's presented as like, oh, like as such a good thing, like something to aspire to, but it feels weird. Like, obviously role models don't need to be like Nobel Prize winners, and do you know what I mean? Like, they can be whoever you want, but it seems odd to put so much emphasis on people who've like essentially like lucked out. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like especially with shows like Love Island, The Only Way Is Essex, or things like that, the people that come across as more like less intelligent, maybe shall we say, they're the people that get more popular, which again seems like a weird thing to try and promote. Because then you watch things like I think it was I'm a Celeb, and there was a girl from Love Island, and as I was watching it, I was like, I don't think you're half as stupid as you're pretending that you're being. And I feel like that's such a really like weird thing to put on the telly. Do you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be dumbing yourself down for anyone. It's just such a weird thing that's the kind of standard.
But I think it's probably always been a thing. It's just, again, it's cheap. It's cheap likability, cheap relatability, and cheap entertainment. If you say something, I went to school with a guy who was like insanely popular, and I remember he used to hit out with really like moronic things in class, and I remember realizing at a point I was like, you're not an idiot at all. Like, you're saying these things because the reaction it's going to get. You're being really clever about it, and
because you know
he would do really good in exams and tests and stuff like that. It's like he was a very clever guy, but he just put on this dumb facade because he didn't need to as well. He was like, he was really, really popular, and it was really bizarre, but he just did it for like the cheap laughs. And it is just like, it's an easy way to kind of get people to laugh and look at you and remember you, I guess. So I think that's why people do it. Yeah. Because it's much harder to be, I guess, like witty all the time and land on the right side of that being like endearing and not you being sort of smug or whereas if people are laughing at you, it's kind of safe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Perfect. So to move on to our last point, I just kind of wanted to briefly, and I mentioned it very briefly before, but talk kind of or discuss a wee bit about the kind of difference between American and British reality TV, because I feel like I feel like you could tell, I mean, even without the accents, whether you even just visually, whether you were watching American reality TV or a kind of British reality TV show. What are your kind of thoughts on that? You don't really watch either, so would you, for me anyway, I would argue that as with everything in life, the American ones are so much more dramatic than the British ones.
My answer here was really just the American ones are louder, in my opinion. And I guess that basically the same answer, more dramatic, just because they are very, Americans very extroverted and very noisy and very but I think, I guess I'm maybe more one thing that also kind of came to mind that you get a lot more in America, or from my perception of it anyway, much more an American thing than you get here, is there's much more of an emphasis on celebrity. Again, like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, stuff like that. Then you don't really have Keeping Up. Was a British family. Keeping Up with the royal family, which we actually had.
With the royals, well.
But this is the first famous like British family that came to mind, which is probably like good.
When you said British family, my head was like the royals, the royals, the royals.
Took me a lot longer. Well, they have lost one, so the numbers are dwindling. They're weak. But yeah. So, so I think you get much more. There's a lot more like opulence on display in American ones. Again, because they're very like capitalist and very like life is winners and losers, and you're that idea of like 24 hours in a day and not working hard enough. That is a very American idea. That's the whole point of the American dream in capitalism, isn't it? That anyone could be successful and anyone could, like Donald Trump could become the president. Why not? But that's the whole thing, is like, so I feel like there's less shame, there's less, they're quite happy putting on these shows in which they're like, tour my mansion and look how great my life is and how mental things are for me. Whereas you don't, that's not really part of British culture. Like that we don't really react very well to that. Easy target right now, but J.K. Rowling had a show where she was like, come see how utterly fantastic my life is, and how much better I have it than everyone else. Then I don't imagine it would react to. Probably would react quite well with like a certain crowd right now. But on the whole, I don't think it'd be very well received. Whereas like that thing's just a dime dozen over in the States, and if anything is like it's fueling the kind of like the entire like political agenda of the nation. That's maybe my more like educated answer. But my initial response was genuinely just the American ones are louder.
Yeah, no, that's 100% fair. And even like, you made such a good point where it's like stylistically and aesthetically they're so different, and the American ones, they're always like properly like decked out, and then they're strutting into these barren mansions. They're like just gigantic big white rooms, and they're like stoating in pretending it's their kitchen kind of thing. But then I've never really watched it, but I've seen clips of things like Made in Chelsea and things, and it's always struck me that everywhere they are looks like a set. I don't know if it's real, but sometimes they'll have like scenes in clubs, like, and you and I have both been in a club. You can't speak to anyone when you're in the club. Do you know what I mean? You have to scream in their ear, and even then, whoever you're talking to is just going, yeah, but they can't hear you.
Yeah, there's no way you're getting in there with a boom mic and getting any detectable audio in a club.
Exactly. The poor boom guy will be deaf as a post before even a second is out. But like in these shows, and like these British shows, they've always got like there's always only like 3 or 4 other people in the club. Like, is the club only just opened? Like, what is going on here?
No.
But yeah, like there's that kind of like stylistically, there's that difference, and then like you were saying, the Americans, they just go hard on everything, even if it's drama, they're going hard on. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like, and then you were talking kind of culturally, I feel like America, like you were saying, is very much like, look how good I am, like how great my life is, like how fancy my car is, and how much fun I'm having. And then Britain tends to be a lot of like we kind of mentioned before, like, haha, look at this person doing this. Do you know what I mean? Or even the shows like, that's like the whole premise of I'm a Celeb. Do you know what I mean? Is that we're laughing at them doing the trials. That's why the people you don't like get put forward for the trials, because we want to see them suffer.
Sorry, what were you saying? The basic idea, isn't it? It's okay to laugh at these people because they put themselves in this situation.
Yeah, I feel like Americans, again, I think it's like a cultural thing, but they don't tend to. Obviously, Britain is like famously so very self-deprecating, um, and I feel like America just goes really hard on this idea that, like you're saying, like, oh look how great my life is. I'm just living it the way that everyone wants to be living. Whereas in Britain, the reality TV shows are like, haha, look at this person get covered in slime, or haha, that person can't afford their telly. Like, do you know what I mean? Their council telly. Can't afford a TV license. Yeah, so I think, I don't know, I feel like by and large they both have the same issues, like in criticisms that we were discussing.
They just wear different
because,
skins, don't they? But they are effectively
yeah,
the same thing underneath.
I feel like, though, saying that, America does have shows where, like, one example that you could think of is £1,000 Sisters,
I don't even know what that is.
where this show is made for just to make fun of these women. Like, that's it. Like, you basically just watch them. They're like £600 each, and it's just watching them living their life, like, it just arguing with each other. And I feel like anything on TLC is kind of that similar vein.
Yeah.
like 90 Day Fiance and things like that. Like, so, and to completely backtrack on the point I just made, yeah, it's, I don't know. Would you say one was worse than the other, in your opinion?
I honestly think they both just, like I said, I think they wear different skins, but it's the same thing underneath. I think we just have a different way of like laughing at. I think it's the same thing that's fueled. We're still pointing and laughing at people who are like desperate and miserable, and who are putting themselves in a vulnerable position, maybe not fully grasping what they're doing to themselves and like the ramifications it can have on their life. I think it's the same thing. I think it's just like Americans are just a lot more like overt about it. I do think, again, what we're talking about, like Britain's Got Talent and X Factor, and again, those are just like the very, very big, obvious examples, but I'm sure there's plenty out there that are a lot more insidious in like smaller ways, or maybe more like subtle ways. But yeah, I think we have plenty of shows that do the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like we'll obviously ingest a lot more of the British shows, obviously, and then like and especially in Britain, there's things that are like at events, like I'm a Celeb is an event. Do you know what I mean? And things like Bake Off and stuff, like, and Love Island, people like are gasping for Love Island to come on, and people know when it's coming on, and things like I'm a Celeb, like, oh, I'm a Celeb should be coming on soon, like, when it should be coming on because there's such like an event. So I think obviously we'll have a different opinion on British things because that's just what we've got more
exposure
like,
to.
We are like in this culture that's that's exposed to it all the time. But yeah, I would definitely agree that one is just as bad as the other. And yeah, I do feel, I always feel very conflicted because, like I was saying, when I was young, I did watch a fair amount of reality TV, and now I do feel bad about that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, there are shows that I do watch that are pretty tame.
Yeah.
Like that Sugar Rush show, like, everyone's very nice. It's just, I'm just watching it because I want to see someone make a nice cake. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I feel like it's reality TV in general, though, is a very odd thing. I feel like we don't quite acknowledge how odd it is.
we do just kind of accept it and don't really look it in the eye too much.
Yeah, it's like that thing that I was talking about, where you kind of watch it in the background, or if you're watching something else, so you don't need to pay too much attention.
Yeah, we don't really want to.
Yeah. But on that note, thank you very much, Sam, as always.
Thank you.
Interesting discussion.
Was indeed.
So yeah, thank you for joining me. And yeah, next we'll see you next time for your very seasonal hosting, which I'm looking forward to.
Exactly. Once again.
But yeah, exactly, it's coming around again. But yeah, we'll see you guys then.
Farewell.